The Catholic Morning Show.
I want to make sure people who were listening in the first segment know I think horses are really cool. I have such respect for horses, which is why I don't go ride them all willy-nilly. Same thing with electricians, too. I don't want people to get the idea that Bo is anti-horse or electrician. I actually have tons of respect for both, and my respect shows forth in me not fiddling with electricity. I call electricians, and not just acting like you can jump on a horse and saddle up and ride away, as the Garth Brooks song says. So always heart goes out to cowboys who actually do the real cowboy work. That's really awesome as well. So just making sure everyone knows we got pro-horse and pro-electrician here on Iowa Catholic Radio. Good morning here on Iowa Catholic Radio. It's good to have you all back with us. I'm Bo Bonner, Matt Wilkham co-hosting, Alexia Baker producing. Everybody happy that you're here. On the second half of the show, we will speak with Mari Pablo, consultant national speaker and ministry leader with the Evangelical Catholic Parish Mission here Wednesday on March 4th at Sacred Heart. Right now, let's turn to our first guest of the day, Dr. Ray Guarendi. You know him as the host of The Doctor Is In, heard weekdays here at noon on Iowa Catholic Radio. He's going to be at the Diocese of Sioux City Men's Conference speaking on March 21st, standing strong as a man, parent, and grandparent. Dr. Ray, thank you for coming on the Catholic Morning Show.
Well, Bo, I got to tell you, speaking of horses, this is something my wife and I did for our anniversary. I said, honey, we need to relive our first date, which was horseback riding. So
beautiful, yeah.
I took her horseback riding, and we had a ball for about an hour and a half until I ran out of quarters.
The grocery store horse I can actually strongly recommend to anyone. It's the living, breathing ones that you should have the due respect for. Well, speaking of due respect, right, you just had a book out, Being a Grandparent. You're going to go talk about being a man, parent, and grandparent here on March 21st at the Diocese of Sioux City. So with being a grandparent, what is it? Why is that a special calling, particularly for our day and age?
One of the pieces of advice that I have in the book is parallel to advice that they give to mothers and mother-in-laws on their daughter and daughter-in-law's wedding day, which is sit up, shut up, and wear beige. Now, I tell grandparents, it's difficult to keep your mouth shut, especially regarding the discipline of the children, and more so that they haven't baptized this kid and he's 18 years old. Problem is, I've seen that create a lot of friction in families. So you got to be real careful about giving advice unless it's asked for. I know the temptation is to step in and give guidance, but I've seen so many relationships actually fracture because we grandparents don't know when to back off. So that's a piece of advice I give a lot. I've seen an awful lot of relationships get worse because with all good intention, we try to help out with discipline and give ideas, and the daughter-in-law doesn't want to hear it.
Well, partly people talk about, and they're absolutely right, the sort of fragmentation of the modern social era, that people live far away and things like this. However, there is the way in which, of course, grandparents can foreseeably, if they want to, comment at all hours of the day with things like texting and things like emails and things like this. Do you think part of the temptation of saying too much, as it were, is the availability of things like communication?
We want to fix things. If my kids have left the church, I want to do what I can to bring them back. So I will say things. I will drop comments. I will hint. I will not read the cues, whether they're open or not. Okay, so that's the first thing. And you can misread the cues on text, on Facebook, on all those things. It's easy enough to do. So I always caution grandparents. I know it sounds counterintuitive because in the past, family generations were much more cohesive. You look to the grandparents for guidance. Well, unfortunately, what is happening now is that a lot of the younger parents are getting their guidance from the internet, or from the so-called experts and from gentle parenting, and they look at mom and dad as if they were kind of throwbacks. So it makes a bit of a minefield you got to be delicate about. And if you got a good relationship with this young adult and their kids, go for it. My son called us the other day, and he said, "Hey, Dad, can I ask you a question?" I said, "Is this about Rosie?" Rosie's his son, or daughter. He said, "Yeah." I had a little tear in my eye, Bo. I kind of cried a little bit. And I said, you want my advice? He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Wait a minute. I'm going to send you a form from my attorney. I want you to sign it and give me permission." But I have another child who has never asked my advice, ever. Very clear she doesn't want it or need it. Okay. So in that case, I gotta decide when I'm going to speak.
Well,
that's big.
Yeah, and the idea, of course, about when to speak and having, reading the signs of when there's open times to do so, that's hard in any human relationship. It's obviously fraught with overtones when it comes to your kids, your grandchildren. What is the sort of approach with praying and asking for signs for when to speak up, or the best way, as it were, to witness to some of these realities that maybe the kid is not living through? What sort of advice do you give about that in the prayer life of grandparents?
I can tell you that when I used to go to the jails with a Bible study, the guys in the Bible study would say, "My grandmother took me to church. My grandmother was the only one who took me to church. My parents didn't take me to church." It's a lot easier for young parents to allow a grandparent, when the child is with the grandparent, to say grace, to accept a crucifix for their room, to take them to Mass when they have the child. Most of the time, the young people are not adamant in their resistance. They'll flow with it. And I think that's the best thing grandparents can do when they can show that side. They can teach that little guy a glory be. Grandparents will tell me that. They'll say, Grandma, can we say our prayers before we eat, even though they don't do that at their house? So I think that's an enormous, out of proportion influence that grandparents can have, even if they don't have that much contact.
So in some ways, pressing the matter unnaturally causes, as you were, the passive resistance to become active and cause more issues. But if grandparents can, as it were, act natural and just sort of permeate the faith with their life, when grandchildren get the chance to be around the grandparents, acting naturally, fully alive in the faith, that might be the witness that sees the grandchild through, rather than, as it were, trying to pick a fight every chance we get to communicate with our kids.
Part of the drive, Bo, is that if my kids have left the faith, then I want to fix it. I want to do what I can to bring them back because I feel like a failure. I must have done something wrong. So there's a pressure to keep pushing, even when it's clear that the pushing is causing more of a rift. The saddest thing I see is when, and I know you got some of your listeners are in this case, where they aren't allowed to see the grandkids anymore. And that's tragic, but it's more common than you know. And it's because they didn't know when to just be a grandparent so the little kid can say, "That's my grandma and I love her so much because she's the sweetest lady of all." That'll speak volumes.
Well, of course, there's a lot of the worries and anxieties around grandparent, parent, and child relationship. But conversely, what is it about being a grandparent that should be seen as a particular gift of that role? What are things that people can, as it were, even look forward to as a grandparent to say, this is a role that is to be enjoyed and actually embraced, and not just only seen as a barrel of anxieties?
Well, heck, I got 9 grandkids. I don't have to do any of the hard work. I don't have to necessarily do the day-to-day stuff that I had to do with my own kids. Heck, I can be Pop. They call me Pop. I can play with them. I can read to them. I can do anything I want because I don't have to really worry about raising them. I'm a presence in their lives that is kind of the easy presence, the warm presence, the fun presence. I tell them, I'm very strict. I say, look, you finish your pint of ice cream before I give you 5 more cookies. I'm very strict that way. But the truth is that the role of being a grandparent is more relaxed because you don't have the demands of being a parent. It's not as complex.
And so when we, one more time, when we accept what God in his due providence and course of time gives us gifts, the sort of witness of not trying to make it harder than it needs to be can often be what makes the difference with grandchildren then.
I can be Pop. They call me Pop, and I don't have to worry so much about disciplining them. I don't have to worry so much about the structure of their schoolwork. I don't have to do any of that. I could just be there, and if I take them out to eat, my attention is focused on them. I don't have 6 other things I'm juggling. I don't necessarily have to say, well, okay, I got to be at work at 6 o'clock. I don't have to do that. So it is a relationship that you don't want to complicate. Now, here's one thing I would say. It's important that you parallel what the parents want. In other words, if they say, I don't want them watching that show or watching TV, okay, all right, you're the parent. You set the ground rule. Pop, I don't want you spanking them. Okay, I won't do that. I will follow according to your dictates, if you will. But within that, there's a lot of leeway, a tremendous amount of leeway.
Well, look, Dr. Ray Guarendi, he is going to be speaking March 21st at the Diocese of Sioux City Men's Conference in LeMars, standing strong as a man, parent, and grandparent. And as we pointed out, he has a new book out, Being a Grandparent. So if you want to check out more about the 2026 Men's Conference, where he will be at, SiouxCityDiocese.org. You can also visit him at dray.com. Dr. Ray Guarendi, thanks for coming on the Catholic Morning Show.
I appreciate it. By the way, I get very nervous about going to Sioux City. You know what I mean? Makes me nervous.
Well, the horses are going to be perfectly fine when you're out there, Dr. Ray.
Well, I like the way you connected electrician and the horses, because those horses my wife and I were on, they were run electrically. So
Actually,
I got both.
Yeah, absolutely. If they shorted out, you would have had big issues indeed. Dr. Ray.
I felt that one.
Dr. Ray, thank you for coming on the Catholic Morning Show.
Thank you, guys. Bye.